Check, 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 check. Alrighty. I think you can hear me now. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. All right, they heard me there. Okay, let's just try this one more time. Change it. I think that's one of the reasons why Clinton won. You know, Clinton had this. No matter what.
I'll tell you, when we first had this conversation about the letters, you were right. And
you know, I was just playing it up, and these guys are like, "What? It has a boost!" You know, I mean, over 25-year-old guys.
Poor job of organizing, poor job of educating too.
Alrighty, better late than never, and it wouldn't be a DP show. In fact, we were just talking right before the show. I had technical master, audio master, and look what happened. I got jinxed. But nonetheless, we are here, and we are ready for another DP show. And of course, how could it be another DP show without my sidekick, my buddy, my right-hand man, Mr. 𝗵𝗶𝗀. What's up, Phil? Let's see if your mic is working.
Is my mic working? I don't want to say anything important and have people not hear it.
Okay, let's see if they can hear you.
Let's make sure that they can hear me. Just anybody go ahead and let me know. Very, very important. Can't hold this smile forever. Looking as cute as I am.
Oh, boy.
Come on. Somebody tell me you can hear me. They're going to say any minute now.
They're going to say,
hey. Come on, can you hear me?
Okay, it's working. All right, it's fine.
Okay, well, hello.
Perfect. Yes.
My name is 𝗵𝗶𝗀. My pronouns are vapor and very good looking and intelligent guy. Yes. And I'm wearing black boxer briefs. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Yes.
Did you have a good week? We've been off for a couple of weeks. Anything that you want to bring up? Oh, look at that. You're wearing your Phil and Dylan shirt from Peggy.
Yeah,
That's nice.
We got a little announcement from Peggy later on. And I'm not going to lie to you, Dimitri. I'm very, very tired. My back hurts. And in the after show tonight, after the good doctor leaves us, maybe we'll talk about why.
Okay, maybe we will.
Because there could be a new show coming soon, and we're calling it The Degradation of 𝗵𝗶𝗀's Mind. It would be a very good show.
We're very honored today to have a special guest with us. He's the founding chairman of the Australian Tobacco Harm Reduction Association. Also a member of the Smoking Cessation Guideline Expert Advisory Group in Australia. I mean, his accolades go on and on and on, but man, what an honor to have you here with us. Dr. Colin Mendelsohn. Hello, Dr. Colin. How you doing? Before we get... Oh, thank you. Don't be a fan. You need to be a friend of ours. First of all, before we get started, I will tell you, it was such an honor and such a pleasure to meet you in person in Dubai. If there's anything that we enjoyed in Dubai, would getting to be able to meet you in person. And I've always said in this industry, there's a handful of people where you talk to them for a few minutes and you learn something new. And I really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us at the show there. Oh, you're welcome. Let me make sure they can hear you. Okay, why they're not hearing you? Let's just make sure that you're not hearing you. Okay. That would be why are they hearing me? You're in there. Can they hear? Just a second. Let me fix this. Pro stereo. Okay, talk for a second, Dr. Colin. Why, Phil, talk for a second? No, they can't hear you either. Why can they only hear me? That's so ridiculous. Yes, I'm trying to fix that right now. Just 1 second. It's got to be it. Why isn't it working? Check 1 2 3. Go ahead now. Jeez. Why is it? It's only picking up my mic, but you're coming out of the same board. I don't know why that's pro stereo. Okay, you're not muted. You're on.
Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3.
Check 1 2 3.
Yeah, those people who are on the chat letting us know that the audio is good. It might be good on this shot, but it's not good on the 3 shots. So that's what we're working on right now. We'll get it done and fixed as soon as we can. And we do apologize for the delay, especially to the good doctor who joined us tonight. So we'll get there.
Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. All right, let's give it a shot now. Phil? Nope. Check. Go ahead now, Phil. It's not working. Just a second. All right. I do not know why this is not working.
Hello. Check 1 2 3. Phil is talking. Yes. Hello. Check 1, 2, 3. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Check, check. Hello. Hello. Check, check. Okay. Okay. So can you hear me on this shot? Can everybody hear me on this shot? Just let me know if you can hear me on this shot. There's a little bit of a delay, Doctor, when we're talking live versus when it goes out on YouTube. That's why we say, "Can you hear us?" And then we have to wait for the shot to actually go. So the shot is on YouTube right now. So can you guys hear me? Okay. And what about you, Doc? Can we hear you?
I can speak. I can speak. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. And can you hear Colin? Let's see. Good. Can you hear? Okay. So I think we can hear me and we can hear the doctor. So that's excellent. And I think eventually we're going to be able to hear Dimitri too. So Dr. Colin, thank you so much for joining us. And I sincerely apologize for the technical issues that we're having. Hopefully we'll get them resolved soon and Dimitri will be able to join us. But like we were saying earlier, meeting you was probably about the best part of the Dubai show. And having a chance to talk to you and talk to somebody who has a similar outlook when it comes to vaping. I sincerely appreciate the copy of your book and for you autographing it for me as well. Look at that. Very, very nice. And I did find my reference in the book. Although I would like to discuss with you possibly an entire chapter devoted to me in the future. That would be very nice.
Second edition, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So why don't you give everybody, let's start off with just kind of the background. Where did you study? What are your doctorates in? And what brought you to vaping?
Yeah. Look, I'm a medical practitioner, graduated in Sydney a long time ago. I've always had an interest in smoking cessation, partly because it's just such a critical health issue. It's the biggest preventable cause of death amongst my patients. And I, in general practice, saw so many people dying from smoking who'd struggled to quit for years. And clearly, as a doctor, if there's one thing you can do to help somebody, then helping them to quit smoking is probably the most important thing. My father died as a result of smoking. My father-in-law died from smoking. And so I became very involved quite a long time ago. And I was very involved in teaching and research and helping smokers quit. And it was a very frustrating area to work in. As you would well know, most people, even with the best treatments, don't succeed. So although I was the smoking expert, they used to call me the smoking doctor. Still, like everyone else, most of my patients either didn't quit or relapsed. And then vaping came along and I saw people quitting. I went to the UK to get more information. I've been following the research very closely. Clearly, this is a winner for many, many people. And yet there's such opposition and such disinformation about vaping. I felt I had to start advocating for this and being more involved and doing more research and writing about it. So my interest in vaping came gradually over the last few years and is, yes, being still going strong.
Yeah, I can't believe how many roadblocks, how many obstacles, how many just regulations and rules are getting in the way of people just trying not to die of cancer. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's not about the evidence anymore. I think the evidence is fairly clear now. We have growing and I think quite strong evidence now. We know vaping works. We know it's far safer than smoking. It really is a no-brainer if you look at it objectively. There's a whole lot of arguments that are used against vaping, but I think underlying it, there's opposition based on moral judgments. People shouldn't be using addictive drugs. There's the whole ideology of people should just stop altogether. There's vested interests that oppose it, who are threatened by vaping. There's financial benefits. There's fear of the tobacco company. There's fears of and concerns about new technology. All these things are in the background, and I think they're driving this opposition. It's not the science, that's for sure.
No, it's not the science, because the science basically at this point, because we hear this all the time. We hear, we need more time to study it. We need more information, but don't we have a lot of time? Don't we have a lot? I mean, the research available today isn't like when smoking got started. We're much more advanced. I mean, we can predict things, not to mention that I've been vaping now for what, 12 years. I mean, you could do some research on me if you'd like.
Well, so that's the double standard. I think that the long-term safety issue is an excuse used by people. It's an argument to say, well, we can't have vaping, but in fact, it's a double standard because we don't do that with anything else. So every new medicine or consumer product comes on the market, and in the case of medicines, we'll do a few years of research, and then we'll make the best possible decision based on the evidence that we have. And we never wait 20, 30 years. Look at COVID vaccines, a major pandemic. We lose a lot more people from smoking than that, but it was introduced quickly. So, we know if cigarettes came on the market today, we would know within 5 seconds that these were deadly and we wouldn't allow them. We know a lot about vaping, and based on the science, based on the toxicity of the chemicals, the number of chemicals, it's a no-brainer. It's beyond any reasonable doubt that these are going over the long term to be much safer.
Yeah, and I think the COVID argument is a good argument. I mean, you're talking about years of data when it comes to vaping, and yet you pushed out a vaccine that we really don't know. I mean, what was the data? Months of data?
Yeah.
And they wanted to get that jab in everybody's arm.
Yeah.
So why does the science work that way, but the science is against vaping?
Well, it's not the science. It's a double standard applied. It's an excuse, in my opinion. It's, when you look at the science, it's very straightforward. We know what's in vapor pretty much, and we see clinical improvements. I mean, health effects are going to be linked to exposure to toxins and carcinogens. I mean, it's a no-brainer that if you reduce those dramatically, you're going to reduce the harmful effects. So it's not the science. It's just an excuse used by people who don't like vaping.
Right. And then we start hearing about nicotine and kind of the demonization of nicotine. Isn't it more because nicotine has always been associated with the cigarette, with the evils of the cigarette, with the carcinogens, the chemicals? I mean, if we got nicotine from a bean and we roasted that bean and ground that bean and created a delicious, coffee beverage with that bean, it wouldn't be demonized the way it is when you compare it to something like, we'll say, caffeine.
Yeah, and look, I think the medical profession's partly responsible for that. I mean, we did demonize nicotine for many years. It was associated with smoking, and we it was a way of helping people to understand the harms of smoking. Nicotine includes nicotine, which is addictive, and so on. So you have to stop. But now we know that nicotine is relatively benign in the doses we're using in smoking and vaping. Now, it doesn't cause cancer, doesn't cause lung disease, only has a minor role in heart disease. And the smokers will tell you it has a lot of beneficial effects. You know, it helps concentration, it helps memory, it helps with weight loss, it calms people, improves mood. It's good for a whole range of medical conditions. So this demonization of nicotine, it's not evidence-based, but even the doctors are confused. And you would know about the study in the US about most doctors thinking it causes cancer.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And unfortunately, that influences attitudes and policy.
Yeah, there's a doctor that I saw here, and a lot of people online know about this because I tried to get him somewhat reported because, you know, the usual question, do you smoke? No, I vape. Oh, well, you know, vaping is not good for you. And I said, you know, what do you mean by that? And I said, I asked him, we got to a point in the conversation where I asked him, well, what would you rather me do? Would you rather me vape or would you rather me smoke? He looked me right in the eye and he said, I would rather you smoke. Oh, I said, wow, really? Wow, yeah, I said, you couldn't have said that to a more poor person, because I mean, I know the data, I know the studies, and you're trying to tell me that you would rather me smoke a cigarette than vape. I mean, and I tried to have him reported to the board. I tried to report him to the organization that he worked for, Millennium Physicians Group, and really it didn't go anywhere. But it made me so angry that I never went back to him, obviously. But just again, it's misinformation. And by the way, I read that part in the book about the good aspects of nicotine, the potential benefits of nicotine. And I realized after talking about weight loss and memory, I clearly have to up my nicotine strength because I want to improve both of those things.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's interesting. I mean, we don't say that vaping is harmless. No one says that. And it's not for young people. It's not for non-smokers. The key message is that vaping is safer than smoking. That's what it comes down to. So if you're a smoker, clearly switching to vaping is going to lead to substantial health benefits. But unfortunately, the opponents of vaping often just ignore that side of it. They keep coming out with all these exaggerated and quite incorrect often risks from vaping, like impotence and heart attacks. But that's not the point. The point is that if you switch from smoking to vaping, you'll have dramatic health improvements. And I can't see any reason why adult smokers shouldn't have the choice to do that.
Yeah, and I truly believe that vaping has saved my life. I truly believe that there would be heart issues with me, especially with my family background, that if I hadn't quit smoking when I did and started vaping, that I would be in a heap of trouble. I want to start talking about the book a little bit, and it's something that you touched on. First of all, I want to make a couple comments about the book, but I'm a chart and data graphs guy. And I love this one right here, because this one, it talks about the harm of smoking versus different methods of nicotine input or intake. And, you know, we see the smoking bar is this long, and then we see the vaping bar when Dimitri comes back on me. I know he's running it in the background. There we go. So the smoking bar is this long, and then the vaping bar is this long. And I think it's an important visual representation of vaping compared to smoking. And when we see the bad data on vaping, when we see a study that says, oh, there's toxic materials, and oh, there's heavy metals, and oh, there's this, and oh, there's that. Well, that's fine. That's fine. But what I want to see is the bar of, okay, well, what does that harmful aspect in vaping look like compared to smoking? Because again, we're not saying that vaping is 100% safe. We're saying it's harm reduction. But if you give me that study and you tell me that there's something bad in it, I want to know how it compares to that of a cigarette. And we're not given that information.
Exactly. And I think one of the big tricks of the anti-vaping people is to say, oh yes, we found all these toxins, and we found this and we found that. But of course, that's meaningless. There's toxins everywhere. In the water we drink, and in the air we breathe, there's toxins. What counts is what is the dose, and is it at a level which can cause harm? And the vast majority of chemicals in tobacco smoke are not present in vapor, and those that are there, mostly less than 1%. So to say we found a little bit of formaldehyde or cadmium is meaningless unless you compare it to environmental or safety occupational standards and give some indication of the comparison to smoking. And that's one of the tricks of the anti-vaping people, and it's very, very misleading.
Yeah, I agree. They don't make that comparison. You know, I always kind of say that they it's like they're looking too hard, right? They're looking too hard. When you look that hard, you're going to find something wrong. If you go in my refrigerator right now and you look as hard for bad things in the stuff that's in my refrigerator, as hard as they look in vaping, you're going to find bad stuff, right? But I think
that's what they do. I mean, most of the research is about finding problems and to justify an anti-vaping position. Our health minister recently commissioned a report from the Australian National University, and they prepared this report on vaping, which is to guide future policy. And basically the report just focuses on, look, we found these chemicals and we found these reports about vapes exploding and popcorn lung. There was no comparison with smoking. There was no attempt to consider the net effect on public health of switching people from smoking to vaping. So, you know, and the media loves it. When that report came out, there was a media blitz. There was widespread coverage of all the terrible things vaping can do. So several of us got together, wrote a paper criticising this report. It was published recently in a peer-reviewed medical journal. We sent out media releases widely to all the media in Australia. Almost no response. We had one radio interview. And I think that's an indication of the problem we have, that the media loves those clickable, scary stories, but they're not interested in the good news. So even when the good news comes out and it's criticised by scientists and it's peer-reviewed, no one's interested. They'd much rather talk about some kid who had who got poisoned, or some study that found that vaping causes some minor health problem.
Yeah. I want to go back to the book. So I pointed out the chart in the book. I think the book is fantastic. I highly recommend the book. Here's how I recommend the book. Anybody who's watching this show doesn't need to read the book because they already understand everything that's in the book. But everybody who's watching this show should own a copy of the book and give the book to somebody who doesn't understand vaping, or somebody who thinks that vaping is worse than smoking, or who is thinking about trying vaping, but they're concerned about what they see in mainstream media. That's who this book is for. I think it is an excellent read. I think it's a very easy read. I think even Dimitri can understand it. It's clearly titled. It's clearly labeled. I love the way you put the like the important points right at the beginning of each part, and then you can go in and get more details on that. When I was reading the first part of the book, I really thought that I was watching the Smoker Show when Dimitri and I were doing the Smoker Show, because a lot of the stuff that we covered in the Smoker Show is like really, really clearly, cleanly defined and organized in the first part of the book. And then the second part of the book is it's actually the sad part. It's the sad part of the book because it goes through and it explains why you're telling us to vape, and all of the like the negativity that you hear and you read and you see about vaping. It tries to explain it away. So why don't you tell me a little bit about like why you created the book? What was your thinking behind the book?
Yeah, look, I'd used vaping as a medical practitioner, had great success. I read the research in great detail and I followed it carefully. And to me, it was just an obvious change in the way we approach smokers, which we needed. But there was nothing out there. I mean, people were reading all the misinformation in the media, and I felt we needed an accurate source that's evidence-based. And there's 400 references in the book. It's all based on the evidence. which addresses all the controversies, gives people a step-by-step guide on how to switch, and gives them the evidence, including where to find evidence. And as you mentioned, Phil, you of course mentioned in the book, there are some very good sources of information. But the focus is on getting people started. As a doctor, I just want them to quit smoking and switch to vaping. And we mainly focus on getting them to get off the cigarettes onto something, a vaping product of one sort or another. They can go on to the fancy devices later if they want to, but I want them off smoking. And the book is to give them accurate information and a guide to how to do that. Because it's people have said to me afterwards, look, I wish this was available when I started vaping, because I had to find somehow information from a mass of misinformation.
Yeah.
So that's the main purpose of the book.
Well, I think when vaping started out, it was relatively easy to understand, easy to follow. But then it broke into the hobby aspect, and the devices started getting more complex. And there were things like mouth to lung and restricted direct lung and direct lung and high wattage. And I think it got more difficult to navigate, especially when vape stores and shops and online resources called a 200-watt direct lung device a starter kit. Right. Yeah, so, I mean, that gets really, really confusing. So a book like this and the data and the information in here, it's really good the way it breaks it down, and it talks about how to get started. And really in Australia, it's more complicated than anywhere else because of the prescription you need.
Exactly. Just to go back to one point you made, I think for a new vapor, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
The amount of information, especially with all these new complex devices, which are fine for people who want to use them. But if you're a vapor, learning about a smoker, learning about the different types of nicotine, different inhalation techniques, devices, and so on, it's just might be too hard. And the book tries to break that down. But in Australia, I mean, you're having big problems in the US, but in Australia, the current approach is that it's a criminal offence to possess nicotine liquid without a prescription. There are fines of up to $220,000 for just bringing in nicotine without a prescription. The government justifies this because of the youth vaping epidemic, which of course doesn't exist, but which it constantly tries to exaggerate. And it feels that having a script enables adults to get vaping products but protects kids. But of course, what's happened when you ban something, and it's essentially a ban, is that you have a huge and thriving black market. And we have millions of disposable vapes, unregulated products coming into the country every month, being sold by tobacconists and convenience stores. And these are dodgy products, and they're being sold freely to kids. So it's just an example of how regulations often produce the opposite effect. Look, we've known for years that bans don't work. You've got to be smarter than that. But unfortunately, our regulators have doubled down on this. They're not willing now to admit they're wrong, and there's no way they'll stop the black market. And unfortunately, things are just getting out of control.
Yeah, I was looking through the book, and I was trying to find that one chart where it showed the different regions, I believe, in Australia, and the fines.
Fines, yeah.
I mean, tens of thousands of dollars and jail time.
Yeah, there are, the laws say in each state they vary, but you can go to jail for up to 2 years or be fined for up to $45,000 or both for possessing nicotine liquid or for vaping. Now, those laws aren't being enforced widely, but they're a threat and they're hanging over people's heads. And I think for a lot of smokers, they think, well, I can't get a script from a doctor because most of them won't prescribe it. Then I'm not willing to take that risk. And I think that's criminal, because we're talking about stopping people from switching to a life-saving product, which does no harm to anyone else.
It really is insane. What's going, and is it the blame in Australia? Are they pushing the child thing? Is it the child thing? Is it the same thing as here? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is. Well, they're saying we just need to keep these products away from kids, but what they're doing is making them available to kids. So if you had them licensed, if you had licensed retailers with very strict age of sale laws, strict severe penalties, and the threat of a loss of license, and they were the only people providing these products, the kids wouldn't be able to get them. There would be a small black market, but adults could get them. And so there wouldn't be the need for a big black market because adults could just walk into a licensed retail shop like they do with cigarettes and alcohol. It's no different.
Right.
But for some reason, vaping products are treated like they're absolute poison, when in fact, of course, we all know they're far safer.
So is it already illegal for the kids to get and use the product?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's illegal to sell. It's illegal to sell to kids, and yes, they can't use nicotine products, but of course they do, and that's just increasing because they're so easily available.
Right. And I gave you an analogy before we went live on the show. Okay. So this is something that recently happened in Florida. It's a very, very sad thing that happened. There was a family on a golf cart. There was a family of 4 on a golf cart, and a drunk driver hit the golf cart and killed everybody on the golf cart. So what are they doing? What they're doing in the town where that happened is they're talking about removing golf carts. They're going to shut down all of the golf cart rental businesses. They're going to close all the golf cart roads. They're going to prevent people from driving golf carts around that community. That reminds me of a story, a grammar school. They had archery class in the grammar school until one brilliant kid took the bow and arrow, aimed it away from the target, and shot it into a house. What did they do? They shut down archery class, right? Yeah. I am so sick of the freedoms and liberties and rights of good people, of adults, being taken away from those people who choose to not follow the rules, right? Yeah. So I say, continue to make these products available for the adult. But if a kid gets it, I don't care, jail them. I don't care, fine the parents. I don't care, shut down the business, research and shut down the business that gave it to them. Make it very, very difficult, make the laws hard enough and enforce the laws, okay, to prevent the bad people from doing bad things and allowing the good people the freedoms and the rights that they deserve. That's the way it should be, in my opinion.
Look, laws are always a trade-off. There's always going to be problems, but you've got to balance the benefits against the risks, and the benefits are huge. The risks are tiny. And yes, there are risks like that, but you don't then ban the whole industry because in this case, for example, there was an accident.
Right. Exactly. Why would you take away? Why would you shut those businesses down? Why would you take away the fun that people have on their golf carts in the community? It's insane. I see Dimitri joined us. Do we have things fixed?
I don't know if I think I got it fixed now. I just want to confirm with Bill what this train wreck was, but I just want to make sure everybody can hear me now. I see 2 things going up and down in my little audio thingamajingy. So let's just wait and see. I do have a list of questions here that I've been racking up for Dr. Colin when we get to him in just a second. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me.
Welcome back, Dimitri. It's good to have you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, right. It's working. Oh, fantastic. I've been really enjoying the conversation, and I just want to jump in real quick before we move on to the questions on something that you touched on a little bit earlier with the book as well, Phil. Just some of the feedback that I wanted to give. I think one of the most important roles that a book can play is, and I'm speaking from the U.S. perspective here. I mean, it's international, but mostly about the U.S. perspective. If you don't know, politicians in America don't read anything. They literally don't read the laws before they sign them in. However, who reads a lot of stuff is staffers. The staffers are usually right out of college kids, very, very passionate about politics. They're interning. And the best way to get a politician is to get to the staffers. The staffers are younger. They understand the technology a little bit better. You know, I highly suggest you purchase multiple copies of this book and pass it in your district to the staffers of the people that you have voted for, are in the office, or for people that potentially could be running. You know, we have midterm elections coming up now. I think it's something that's really underutilized here in America, and I've seen this multiple times. We had a really, really good repertoire with a lot of the staffers, the younger staffers. When we give them material to read, they will read it. But a politician, no, they barely read comics when it comes to cartoons. So I don't know if it's the same in Australia.
I agree, Dimitri, and that's what we're doing in Australia. We're actually giving them to politicians, but we are not. We're not deluding ourselves that they're going to read them, but but the staffers we expect will, and we know that some of them are. And yes, that's one way to slowly get the message through, because I think at the end of the day, this is a political decision, how vaping's regulated. We can make as much noise as we want, but it's the politicians who are going to, in Congress and in our Parliament, who are going to make the laws.
Absolutely,
and it's a matter of building the pressure.
Absolutely, I think a lot of the vapors are frustrated, and I think people like yourself, esteemed medical professionals, are very frustrated because I think a lot of times we're just we feel like we're not getting across, but I mean, it boils down to money, and politics is what makes this world go around. And if you're not able to penetrate in those using a strategy to penetrate through those avenues, then it's a lost cause. And we've seen it over and over happen in the states, methodically through the states, and then obviously in the federal level. But data and science is undisputable. That's one thing that Dr. F always told me since day one that I met him. He's like, you can say whatever you want to say, but data that can obviously be double checked and triple checked, that is undisputable. And the way to do that is to present it to him.
Yeah, and of course they've got to read it.
Yeah, of course.
Unfortunately, Dimitri, it's very hard for people to change their minds. People get committed to a particular point of view, and they dismiss evidence that doesn't support their point of view, and that's partly what we're up against. Once they've locked themselves into a view, they double down on it.
That is absolutely correct. Let me just pull a couple of questions before this list gets very, very long. And I had something set up to put them on the screen, but now that I'm here, it's easier for me just to relay them to you. This is something that we talked before the show as well too, so it's great that one of the audience members brought it up. First of all, a very good comment from Mallory Gates. Dr. Colin's book was an icebreaker between me and my doctor. I found out he vapes, and we are exchanging recipes now. So there you go, one prime example of how you have helped already with your book. Question from Mike Peterson. Dr. Mendelsohn, how do you deal with the backlash from the public or your peers for your book or your point of view?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I get a lot of hostile responses. The thing that really annoys me is that I'm apparently paid by tobacco companies and e-cigarette companies. And I get that repeatedly, and it's been published in the media. It's been talked about on national radio. I've never taken $1 from tobacco companies or e-cigarette companies. All my advocacy is paid for by me out of my own pocket. So, it doesn't hurt. It's really annoying. It's really distracting because it's used to undermine my credibility. That's why it really annoys me. So, whenever there's an interview, they always say, but, are you paid by Big Tobacco? And was there any connection with an e-cigarette company once 5 years ago? So it's used to undermine my credibility. Look, as far as not being popular in certain circles, I just think this issue is too important. I just think this is a life-saving issue. And as a doctor, I think I've got an ethical responsibility. Just like I think other doctors have a responsibility to prescribe these products, which are life-saving. So yes, it makes the job harder. But look, at the end of the day, it actually makes me more determined because I feel they're being unfair and using dirty methods to shut me down. So it actually makes me more determined.
Which is excellent. I think, education is so important. And I think that's one of the great reasons for this book. You think it's because mainstream media is so negative, so anti-vaping, that when you see a doctor come out and being pro-vaping, you automatically assume he's getting paid.
Yes, that's what they assume. Exactly. But I've been working in this field for 40 years to help smokers. It's almost like, well, he's been telling people to stop smoking for 40 years, but just recently he's telling them to switch to vaping. Oh, he must be a tobacco company shill. Yeah. And that doesn't make any sense. I've been doing this for years, and now I think we've found a better way to help so many of those smokers. So, of course, I'm supporting it.
I have brought up the Hippocratic Oath a few times in my debates with some doctors, and a lot of them, because I'm Greek, obviously, so I'm trying to use that little edge on it as well too. And you know, just like you said earlier, especially with this lung doctor that we had a big Twitter exchange with that junk that was posted at a British tabloid, but. They always bring up the same thing. It's like, yeah, well, we swear to ethical standards, but we also have to do the same thing about kids. And my argument always is like, why didn't you do anything about cigarettes all these years? You know, it's just like all of a sudden now you want to become the. I think that impartially, and I don't know how it is in Australia, but I think partially in the United States, because vaping is such a hot trend and topic right now, I think that a lot of doctors are jumping on board simply because of the publicity that's given as well too. You know, I mean, it's a different world that we live in.
The research shows that doctors get their views from the media on vaping.
Yeah.
So they don't read the clinical papers. They read the headlines, and they have the same views as the rest of the population. It's not based on the evidence. So, you know, it's very hard to, until the media comes on board. That's the approach they're going to be taking.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it's just like, oh, I'm going to get 3 minutes on TV and I'm going to talk bad about vaping, and now I'm become, I'm going to save the kids. Question from Janine Timmons. Does Dr. Mendelsohn feel Australia will ever crawl out of the dark hole they currently are in regarding vaping?
Look, definitely. I mean, this is an unstoppable force. I mean, we've got 82 million vapors in the world. The number of vapors doubled in Australia in 3 years, and now it's, I'm sure, gone up again. And look, vapors are spreading the word to other smokers, and every vapor tells me, yeah, I got my brother onto it and my couple of friends. I think it's an unstoppable force. I work very closely with Alex Wodak, who's a wonderful doctor and a veteran of the harm reduction war. So he's helped with medical supervised injecting rooms and needle exchanges, all these things which were opposed in a very hostile way for a long time, but then finally came in. And years later, people have said, well, why didn't we do that earlier? And I think the evidence will win, but it is going to take time. And, it's going to be, we're going to have to wait for some of the senior people who are opposed to vaping to move on. And I think we're going to need a lot of advocacy at the political level to keep the pressure on, but I've no doubt that it will be allowed. The trouble is, will the vaping industry still be alive in a few years' time? With the pressures that you're feeling over there and we're feeling here. One of our states is trying to close down vape shops, and that would be a terrible loss of a very valuable resource.
I saw a picture the other day of a vape shop that had a sign. It was all over Twitter. It was a vape shop with a closed sign, and then next to it there was a sign saying "Coming soon, smoke shop." I mean, the irony in that is, it's really criminal if you think about it. I mean, it's just so grim.
We here in America once thought that vaping was an unstoppable force. We thought that there were so many vapors that there's no way. We've heard this many times at the shows that there's no way they're going to be able to shut this down. And look what they did to us. Look at the PMTA. Look at what's going on here in the United States. And something that I always say, and I think I even mentioned it to you in Dubai, if everything was okay with vaping today, right now in the United States, no bans, no PMTA, no nothing. We were free and clear to navigate. We would still be in trouble because mainstream media has made this technology look so bad that a lot of people don't want to go anywhere near it. So even if let's say we can get through the legal struggles, let's say we can get some products through the PMTA, we have to change the public's mind and educate people, and maybe even with resources like this is a tool. This is another tool that we have. But until we get these tools in the hands of the people that need them and open their minds to listen to fact-based data, we're in trouble.
There's so much misinformation, and we know the perceptions of risk in the US and in the rest of the world are really distorted. So that's what we're working against. You mentioned the lung doctors. They're the worst opposition to vaping. lung doctors, their mantra is you shouldn't take anything into your lungs but fresh air.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they completely miss the point that we're talking about a much safer alternative. Of course, you shouldn't take anything but fresh air, but if the alternative is smoking, it's a no-brainer. They don't understand harm reduction. They just think, oh, we've got to protect those delicate little lung cells. And yes, that's fine, but smoking is so much worse. And it's unbelievable to me that they can't see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's part of what Steve asked in the chat. How do we get more doctors to support our industry as harm reduction as you have? And I mean, I don't know how it is. I mean, I know how it is in countries that have socialized medicine, but for America, I think that once we're able to replenish the money that approved pharmaceutical cessation drugs provide, I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to succeed to change more doctors' minds here, because unfortunately, that's just the way it is. You know, there's just so much money being funneled into the medical system from people smoking and dying.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's a lot of opposition from Big Pharma in Australia, and I think they certainly stand a lot to lose if vaping takes over. I mean, there's anti-smoking drugs, but there's also all the drugs that treat the illnesses that smokers get. And I know it's very cynical, but I suspect that that's playing a role in the scheme of things.
Question from Michael Redfern. Where does a person find fresh air in 2022?
I saw that too.
It's a very, 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 very good question.
There's chemicals everywhere.
There's chemicals everywhere. Question from Scott Scavage. I got, well, this is more of a comment, but he just got a packet from his place of employment offering free support to quit vaping because it's as harmful as smoking, in their words.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Wow. That's unbelievable. That is, and that's unfortunately a very common belief. And that's one of the things, I mean, you mentioned the book isn't for vapors, but actually I think it has the benefit of giving people answers to that question. So when someone says to you, oh, that's worse than smoking, which I'm sure you hear all the time, or you'll get popcorn lung or Evali, you know, it's good to have the evidence. And I have tried to spell that out in the book to be able to say to people, well, these are the facts about the relative risk.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It does give people the ammunition to combat what they hear and the negativity towards vaping. I do like in the book how you do talk about, you know, if this, and it's something that I always say, if the standard cessation methods don't work for you, then try vaping, you know. But you also talk about going from vaping or going from smoking to vaping and then not vaping, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And I think it's and I think it's really you know, something that Dimitri and I talk about too. You know, if you can go from that cigarette to the vape and then to nothing, I mean, fantastic. That's a win. Right?
Yeah, look, but the main benefit comes from stopping smoking. I mean, if people are continuing to vape, well, that's really a fairly minor secondary issue. And I don't think we should waste too much time on that. I think people should know it's best if they can, but really they've achieved most of the health benefits from quitting smoking. And I think that's where our effort should be, getting people to start vaping. People enjoy nicotine though, Phil, as you know. A lot of people get a lot of pleasure out of nicotine.
I love it.
Yeah, it's good for you in lots of ways, helps you concentrate, feels good. And I think people who vape have got to weigh those benefits up against the very small risks. So for some people, and if you've got schizophrenia or Parkinson's disease or ulcerative colitis, nicotine's good for you. So for some people, it's probably a good thing to stay on vaping.
It's for me, it's a stimulant. Obviously, it helps me focus, and I desire it. It's the irony is when they tell you we're going to give you a less harmful form of nicotine in order for you to quit a less harmful form of nicotine. That's it's just, when they suggest, hey, we're going to help you and give you tools to quit vaping. Literally, you're telling me you're going to give me a less harmful product to quit a less harmful product. You know, it's just it's
that
crazy.
Doesn't make any sense. But I will come back to what you said about the current pharmaceutical aids. The fact is that there was a meta-analysis done not that long ago, which found that in the clinical trials where they've tested all the best medicines, they found that after 12 months, only 6% of people were abstinent. So that's what we're competing against. I mean, these products just don't work for most people.
Right.
And they smoke and smoke and try and try. Each year you keep smoking after 35, you lose 3 months of life. The important thing is to use what works best and use it as soon as possible. And people are stuffing around with medications, and I've got nothing against medications. Sure, try them, but be realistic about what you expect. And out in the real world, where people go and get NRT from pharmacies, you know, the results are virtually negligible. Whereas vaping, of course, we know is so much more effective.
You know, you talk about more effective. First of all, one of Dimitri's most important needs and requirements for nicotine is his ability to deal with me on a regular basis.
That is absolutely true.
But, you know, you talk about the success and how vaping, you know, works better for some people when it comes to cessation compared to the standard stuff, the patches, the pills, the gums, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that you say in the book is that it gives you that ritual. It gives you that hand to mouth.
Yeah.
It simulates the physical, you know, movements, if you will, of smoking.
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the benefits. But one thing that I don't think you cover in the book, and I wanted to get your opinion on it, was when vaping was younger, in the earlier days of vaping, I think a lot of the success came from the support structure that we had. And when I talk about support structure, I'm talking about the forums, the Facebook groups, the older vape meets and the older vape groups that used to get together. And there was a lot of camaraderie there, and there was a lot of support, and there was a lot of people helping each other, right? I think that had some benefit more than just somebody going to the C store and buying a disposable. There's nothing there, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the vape shops offer that support. There are communities around the vape shops, but don't forget, smokers have been ostracized for years. You know, told that they're dirty and weak and harming other people. And I think for them to find a support group which supports their quitting method is a huge component of being able to quit. But you're right, the behavioural. I have a lot of patients who say to me, look, I've tried to quit all the drugs, but I still really miss doing this. And I miss the sensations, and I miss the throat hit, and I miss that feeling of the smoke going and the visible cloud. And vaping provides that, and none of the other treatments do. And it gives you nicotine in a cigarette-like way.
Yes.
Unlike gums and patches, it gives you a hit. And so, and I think as a doctor, one of the frustrations I've had is that, yes, people quit, but they keep relapsing. And, you know, down the track, people will relapse. They're in a situation with smokers, just feel they want to have a cigarette. They have one, of course, that's the end of it. But if you've got a vape, you can have that experience and not relapse. So I think they will prove to have a long-term relapse prevention aspect as well.
I'm actually proof of that, right? Because before vaping was a thing, I quit smoking twice. Once for a couple of months, and then once for a year. I mean, for a full year, I was not a smoker until my grandmother passed away. And just the stress of that and the emotional strain of that put me right back on the cigarettes. Like I didn't even quit. Like I didn't even skip a day, and back to a full pack a day smoker within a day.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you had a vape at that stage, you could have just, you know, had the same smoking experience, but without the poisons, and prevented that relapse. Yeah.
Up my nicotine for a little while.
Anyway, my comment from Marshall Keith: I have no intention of giving up nicotine. I am almost 67 years old. And I hope you be 99 years old, Marshall. You're a good guy, buddy. So vape all the nicotine that you want. A little comment here. Any thoughts on how Health Canada is now suggesting that the Australian restriction, and you know, Canada has hit their share of it's even worse there because every province is doing something different. But Health Canada is now suggesting that the Australian restrictions is the proper example to follow rather than the UK approach.
Look, that's just funny. I mean, it is not working. In the US, in the UK and in New Zealand, smoking rates are falling faster than ever since vaping became available. In Australia, they've pretty much leveled out over the last 6 years or so. In New Zealand, they introduced vaping, they legalized vaping in 2020, so it was available legally from vape shops. The smoking rate fell by 20% in 1 year. In 2020-21 fell by 20%. In Australia, over a 6-year period, our smoking rate has fallen by 19%. So yeah, our model is just not working, and that's very clear from the national comparisons.
I wonder, Dr. Colin, if is there any movement right now happening in Australia to gather the data of this, I will call it miserable experiment that the government has imposed on its smoker citizens? Is there any data being gathered now, or something that will be able to be presented at some point and say, hey, look, here's the data, and whatever you've done is just not working, and it's detrimental to the population health?
Yeah, look, I think we're kind of part of a controlled study. So Australia's using this method. It's going nowhere. Countries like the UK and New Zealand are using a model that we think is the right model, and they're having huge results. Their smoking rates are falling much faster than here. So I think that speaks for itself. Now, the opponents will say, oh, but there are other factors and you can't compare countries. But the rate of decline is so much faster. And these are other countries that have all the tobacco control strategies in place, like we do. And that's the one thing that's different. So I think it's very naive to say, oh, it's other things doing that. And I think as time goes by, we'll see those differences increase further.
Absolutely. Chris Robinson, I lost my mother on Monday last week and my wife on Saturday. Wow. Going through a bit of nicotine right now, but still not smoking, and it has no attraction for me. First of all, sorry for your loss, Chris. I can't imagine what you're going through. Hopefully you have a good support system around you, and our thoughts and prayers go out to you. But these are the trying times. I've seen that with myself as well, too. And I think a lot of vapors go through that, where you know, there'll be something dramatic in their life, and that stress always attracts you back to smoke. And it's kind of weird. It's more of a comforting level, I think, more than anything else, because especially in the U.S., higher nicotine is available to help you through those times. And which brings me to the point of this, you know, this fascination that a lot of the vaping industry went through, especially through the golden years of vaping between 2017 and 2020, when everybody made a lot of money. But there was this huge drive of, I'm going to lower my nicotine. You should lower your nicotine, which was a little bit of a, you know, it was a little bit of a manipulation to sell more liquid, because, you know, at the end of the day, you're just going to vape more. But just once and for all, we asked this to Dr. F, we asked this to other medical professionals that we've had on the show, is just, unless you need to or want to, nicotine is probably one of the safest ingredients in a formulation of e-liquid for vaping. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, I think nicotine in the doses we use in vaping is relatively benign. And what I often tell patients is, you know, if you're using a pod device, have a couple of different pods. If there are times in the day when after work you feel you really need more nicotine, or if you get stressed, use the stronger pod or use the other device. So varied according to your needs. And look, if you can stop it, of course, that's better. But if you can't, don't worry. And you're probably getting benefits from it.
Yeah, I saw another tweet the other day. You know, by the way, if you're not on Twitter, you guys need to come up here and join our army. But I saw a tweet the other day where somebody's asking a question, just a journalist, just a general question of, you know, what is the equivalent of an average vapor to a cigarette? And there really isn't an answer, because the product is so diverse. And it offers you so many, and this is why it works at the end of the day. I mean, you have the physiological aspect, the enjoyment, the flavors, but ultimately you can tailor it, which is something that drugs don't do. You know, drugs is like, here's a dosage, right? But vaping gives you that variety and adjustability to switch flavors from morning to night, switch nicotine levels, go up on nicotine, go down on nicotine. You have so many variety of options to suit your needs to stay off cigarettes.
Yeah. I think it does. I agree. It doesn't really matter. I think you should take as much nicotine as you need.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many cigarettes that represents. It's whatever you need. to stop you from going back to smoking and to give you the effects that you want.
Yes.
I mean, there was one study that found that a dual pod is equivalent to about 20 cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a rough guide, but it's not even, it doesn't really matter. From a practical point of view, you should use what you need. And whatever you're doing, you'll be so far ahead of being a smoker. It's the right thing.
Yes, and I mean, even with a dual pod or any kind of vaping, there's so many variables involved. You know, how hard you're inhaling it. You know, your usage of it. I mean, there's just really no clear cut answer. And the fact, what really pissed me off about this thing was that, like, you have a journalist that doesn't know nothing about vaping, just asking a general question on Twitter, and then he's going to write some piece that's going to be just completely horrible for us. You know.
Yeah, I don't know about in the US, but certainly in Australia, often, you know, an anti-vaping advocate will talk to a journalist and they'll just suck it up and spew it out without any critical analysis and often without any input from a pro-vaping expert.
Yeah,
and that's really frustrating. Really frustrating.
It really is. We need to get more people like you out there in the public eye to at least try to get our 2 minutes of counter. Facts of what's going on there. Steve says, I stopped hearing the comments of how do I vape 12 milligram liquid now that everybody's using 50 milligram salts. Hey, we feel exactly the same way, Steve. Trust me. Trust me. Janine from Canada, lovely Janine, says, to me, the only reason people ask what the equivalent to a cigarette is because they're searching for something wrong with vaping. And I have to agree with that. I mean, I have to agree. You cannot, you know, not have that. I mean, with all these bad stories that have been written, you cannot not have that in the back of your mind. Like, you're trying to find, you know, oh, this is bad because it's the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes. But the harm is not equivalent. I don't care how much nicotine you get. The harm is not equivalent to it.
Yeah, it's a scare tactic, isn't it? We have government campaigns saying, look, one of these disposable pods could be like 50 cigarettes. Do the kids realize this in terms of nicotine? But of course, it's sophistry. It's true, but it's misleading. I mean, what counts is all the other poisons. So yeah, it's very frustrating. And I think journalists need to be better informed and a little bit more critical about the stuff that they're presenting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they need to be called out. That's what we're doing on Twitter. We're calling out the people that are writing these bad stories. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, Dimitri, you said before that we need more people like you know, Dr. Mendelsohn out there, and I agree with you. We need that look. We need that mature, reasonably sounding person. We need that intelligent person. Like I looked at the book, and you have a picture of this gentleman right here. Right, if this gentleman had been the face of vaping from the start, right, what would the industry look like today? But unfortunately, you know, when we talk about journalists and when they interview people when it comes to vaping, I mean, they don't exactly pick the cream of the crop, right? Yeah. They don't always pick the best, you know, the best looking people to support the industry. And I look, I mean, I don't care what you look like and how you dress, but it doesn't necessarily shine the brightest light on the industry. You know, when you talk to some of those people, or, you know, you go to a vape show and the only thing you show are people, you know, younger people blowing clouds. And it's been a bad look from the start. It really has. So I certainly appreciate people like you out there fighting for the industry.
What are your thoughts on you know, we had Father Jack Kearney on. He's passed away now, God bless his soul, but just a huge proponent of tobacco harm reduction out in California. And he had done a piece on addiction versus dependence. And I get this a lot. In fact, every Monday I have a poker game here, and I had a hillbilly here last week. Oh my God, I was so mad. He would go outside and smoke, because you know you can't smoke at my house, and then come inside and dip, you know, tobacco dip in his lips. So he was dual using dip and cigarettes. And, you know, he brought up, you know, oh, this is killing kids and the lungs and all this stuff, you know. And then he's like, well, you know, after I brought up, you know, the casual conversation, trying to educate him slowly. And then they hit you with this. Well, you're still addicted to nicotine. So I want to get what your thought. This is like the final straw of the argument, you know, right?
Yeah. When they're desperate. Yeah, I mean, the fact is, of course, there is an argument about addiction and dependence. And addiction is strictly defined as using a product or a behavior which you know is harmful, which you use compulsively in spite of the fact that you knowing it's harmful. Well, we can't say that about nicotine. You get dependent on nicotine, and that means that when you stop it, you get physical withdrawal symptoms. But it's not, you don't get addicted to nicotine. Nicotine is not an addiction. It's a dependence. And I think the important thing is, so what if you're dependent on nicotine if you're not getting all the poisons from smoking? So I don't think that's an argument at all. I mean, yes, some people might want to stop nicotine, and maybe for some people it's a problem because they're on it and it's uncomfortable to stop. But I think by far the biggest issue is they've stopped smoking, they're no longer addicted, and they're probably getting benefits from nicotine.
Yes, absolutely.
But again, like we talked before, it's what nicotine has been associated with. That's why they can make that comment, right? Because nicotine has also always been associated with a cigarette, because things like this are fine. This is okay. This is acceptable, right? So why is this acceptable? But as soon as we start talking about nicotine, we can't do things like this.
Because nicotine's been demonized, and it just has a reputation, and once that's locked in, and we have demonized it, so we're partly responsible for that.
Speaking of demonizing, boy, this guy here, let me see if I can bring it up here. This guy here, whew, man, I saw some of these videos, Dr. Colin, and I tell you what, I was flabbergasted that this, I thought it was The Onion at some point. I thought it was like but this guy is just unbelievable. How is this allowed? I mean, it's just, but not only is it lies, but I mean, this guy should be sued. It's flat out misinterpretation of data and facts.
Look, this was a campaign funded by Queensland Health, which is one of our states in Australia. They asked Dr. 𝗂𝗀, who's a very well-respected doctor and scientist, media figure, to do some videos. And he did, but the videos were very misleading, and they presented vaping in a very bad way. They missed out information. They misled people. They didn't compare it to smoking. They exaggerated the risks. And so I produced a series of videos in response to that, which actually stated the facts. And look, Dr. 𝗂𝗀 blocked me on Twitter after that. And I think he's sort of committed. I mean, he was paid to do these ads, and he's normally a very reliable and respected source. But I think this is kind of the natural narrative in Australia, and he got away with it. And look, my videos have been popular, and had thousands of hits. But the Dr. 𝗂𝗀 campaign, of course, officially endorsed by the government, carries a lot more weight.
Listen, any guy that's willing to take a picture like that with that shirt on and that smile on, he's hungry for attention. Obviously, he got paid for it. I get it. I mean, I get the funding of it. But you cannot tell me, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, you cannot tell me that this is not like his 2 minutes of fame, especially a doctor. It's like you're not very popular in high school. Again, I might be completely out of line of saying this, but I mean, anybody that takes a picture like that is not. But your campaign, which is meant to combat, and I really like the way that you've done this, because the videos that you've done are short, to the point, and they combat exactly the spew of lies that are coming out of Dr. Hawaii shirt Carl that's over there. But I do want to suggest, I'm going to play just a couple of videos here for people to see exactly what you're doing. But I highly suggest for everybody that's watching the chat and on the replay to go and subscribe to Dr. Mendelson's YouTube and share these videos. You know, I mean, these videos should have literally as many videos as this guy over here. Look at it. This guy has millions of views on cloud chasing, for crying out loud. You know, I mean, this is really, really important stuff. And I want to make sure that people just kind of understand what we're trying to get across. Here's a couple of snippets of Dr. Cole's Vape's Truths.
G'day, Dr. Cole here. Does vaping cause cancer, like some people say? Well, there are some cancer-causing chemicals in vapor, but in very low doses. Nicotine itself doesn't cause cancer. The risk of cancer from vaping is less than 1 in 200 of the risk of cancer from smoking. Watch out for more vape truths from me, Dr. Cole.
And let me play one more.
Here. Vapes contain toxic chemicals, so they must be deadly, right? Wrong. The harm from any chemical depends on the dose. Most of the chemicals in vapor are present at very low doses, and most cause little or no harm. Watch out for more vape truths from me, Dr. Cole.
Just very, very well done and quick and to the point. This is what we need, you know, getting it. And look, you're natural. I'm not going to lie to you. You've done very well with them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I mean, each of these videos was designed to counter one of the videos from Dr. Karl. So they were titled the same way and they addressed the same issues. And they referred to Dr. Cole as opposed to Dr. Karl. And he used to say at the end, watch for more vape truths from Dr. Karl. So it was a bit of a takeoff, but I have to say, just in defense of Dr. Karl, he has a certain kind of persona of being a bit offbeat, and he does wear wild shirts, and that's kind of part of his identity. So it's kind of a deliberate thing to.
I know. I was taking more of a stab at him. I'm sorry. It's
kind of to present him as the friendly face of science, who's just like, you know, a fun guy, and he does generally present accurate information, but in this campaign, he was way out of line, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously a PR firm behind that put this thing together, and you know, obviously was guided, and obviously was paid for, and I get all that. To me, the biggest tragedy in all this is, and this is another comment from one of the audience members, is that it intentionally deceptive misinformation has penetrated on government websites. Like if this was like a website saying, you know, Trump is, you know, whatever, has an affair in Russia with some chick or whatever, it would have been taken down. There would have been lawsuits. There would have been anything. But here we have this absolutely nonsense on a government website that it just blows my mind.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? And that's the problem we're up against. You know, we have 7 state and territory governments and the federal government. They're all opposed to vaping. And they get away with this sort of thing all the time. Our federal government has a webpage talking about Evali and still saying, oh, you shouldn't vape, even vaping nicotine, because it could be a risk. Well, several of us just wrote a paper on Evali, which is actually coming out in the next couple of weeks, which makes it very clear that Evali has nothing to do with nicotine vaping. We've written to the health department and said, look, you've got to take that down. That's clearly wrong. And we had a letter from 30 experts saying just that, and they completely ignored it. And this paper will hopefully add more impact to that. But the government can get away with whatever they like. It seems they're sort of unaccountable, and that's very disturbing.
There's quite a huge
representing us.
Quite a huge double standard in the world right now.
Yeah.
And I think it goes a lot deeper than vaping. You talked about flavors in the book. One of my arguments about flavors has always been kids are going to use these products, right? No matter what you do. Now, if you take all the flavors away and the only thing you have available is a tobacco flavor, and if they're so concerned with kids going from vaping to smoking, then why are they training kids to enjoy the flavor of tobacco when that's the only thing that's available? Because I don't understand the thinking behind that.
Yeah, that's a good argument. I mean, kids have been smoking for years. Sure, it was awful to start with, but they all practiced and persisted, and you know, kids were smoking in large numbers previously. And if you were a kid vaping watermelon flavor, why would you go on to disgusting cigarette sticks, which are much more expensive and taste awful? It doesn't make any sense. I think they need to make the packaging much less kid appealing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with watermelon vapor, but you can't show, you know, cartoon pictures and bright colors. I think the packaging needs to be more designed for adults, but the adults like those flavors as well. And it's wrong to take them away just because kids are misusing them.
Especially the watermelon peach, the #1 selling in the unsalted line by Mr.
Number one
𝗵𝗵𝗃.
best selling flavor in the unsalted line. It's very delicious.
But the
So
truth is that, and this is a comment sort of question from Bill in the audience, is we get accused of marketing to kids all the time. Our industry, and rightfully so in some of the marketing cases, I get it. But ultimately, that should be controlled at the point of sale. But the opposition is using worse kid-friendly marketing campaigns like puppets and cartoons and video games and TikTok and young influencers to promote this anti-vaping misinformation, which I think in the case of a lot of kids, the more that they see that, the more they are prone to go and experiment with it, simply because you have an adult that's telling them, hey, you can't have that.
Yeah, you can't have that. And all the other kids are doing it.
Right.
And they're enjoying it. And we're getting those messages even from government organizations. I mean, there's some of those government campaigns against vaping showing kids, you know, vaping and having fun, and all the kids are doing it. So why aren't you? It's certainly, they've got to be very careful about sending the right message.
I've always said, like, you know, I had teenage daughters, younger daughters, when I quit smoking with vaping over 11 years ago, and I think that my kids saw the transition from smoking to vaping, and especially when my oldest one went to high school, and you know, all these kids were like, oh, here, try a vape. You know, my daughter had a really good answer for them. She'd say, it's not cool to me because my dad and my mom use that to quit smoking. Like, I don't think that there's any coolness in saying, oh, I'm just going to, you know, smuggle this product that my parents used as a tool to quit vaping. And if more governments would do that, say, hey, listen, you guys use this and adults use this to quit smoking, and make it that it's uncool, because anything that your parents do is uncool. You know, my kids never had a desire to vape, and look, I mean, I had available here, you know, tons of devices and liquids over the years. They just never had the desire for it.
Yeah, I think it has to be framed as an adult quitting aid, like they have in the UK. They made it very clear this is a product for adults to help them quit. It's as simple as that. It's not for kids, and we're not going out advertising to kids and telling kids they mustn't vape. We're saying this is an adult quitting product. And so the kids are less interested. But we had a report done just recently in one of the Australian states where they interviewed lots of vaping kids, and they found that the report concluded, we need to re-educate kids, and we need to give them more information at schools. But what the report found was, why are kids vaping? They're vaping because their friends are vaping. They're vaping because they're enjoying it. They like the flavors. It helps them to cope with stress, helps them to cope with difficult lives, helps them to relax. There are positive, and to reduce weight. There are positive benefits, and overall the kids said, look, overall for us, it's giving us benefits which outweigh the risks. So, you know, just telling kids to stop, I mean, it's a waste of time. They're more likely to vape, but they're getting lots of benefits out of vaping, and so I think education programs and don't vape programs are really a waste of time.
I think kids are just smarter than what we were growing up. I think kids understand that this product is less harmful than smoking. I think 100% that's not being taken into equation as well too. Yeah. And you know, if I knew that when I started smoking, I was 15. So if I knew that, I probably would have picked up a vape instead of a smoking. And I think a lot of kids would just don't give them enough credit. Yeah, I mean, you're going to start something if
that's right.
My argument,
they say that in this report. The kids say that well, it's not as bad as smoking. Right. They are aware of that.
They're smarter than the people that make that make the laws. You know what happened this year at my daughter's I have a second daughter that's in high school. She's a junior in high school this year, and in their bathrooms, they installed vape detectors and anti-bullying detectors. Okay. So obviously one is for vapor and the other one is like a microphone that's triggered by some certain phrases and it picks it up to try to cut on the bullying. The funny part about this whole thing is that if you go into the bathroom, if you're a girl, and this is how my daughter found out, if you're a girl or a guy or whatever, and you go into the bathroom and you want to spray deodorant in your armpits, the vape detector goes off in the bathroom. So, obviously some company made millions by selling this junk to the school system. But I mean, this is what we've gotten down to, putting vape detectors in bathrooms of the kids. It's just, it's mind blowing.
It's kids, it's alienating kids, and it's an invasion of privacy. They're putting cameras into some bathrooms in Australia. What they've got to remember is that so many of these kids would otherwise be smoking. It's all very well to say, well, kids mustn't vape, but this is diverting a lot of kids away from smoking. And stopping vaping is having, and we've seen that in the US, when a number of places where they've restricted vaping, smoking rates have gone up. I think from a public health point of view, that's far worse.
Yeah, it's funny because the FDA wants you to prove in your submission of a PMTA that your product is appropriate for the protection of public health. That is the standard that you have to meet, which is virtually impossible. Well, not impossible for low nicotine cigarettes because they got it, but this is the standard. However, they don't look at the harm that's being done by everything. They removed flavored pods from the market here in America. Immediately, black market grew of disposable vapes, which are actually, even more enticing, I think, to kids than the original pod systems were. And every step that they've taken to fix the issue has caused more harm, and that's not taken in consideration with the government. We have to prove that this is better for the public, but they don't have to prove that what they're doing is harming the public.
That's a very good point, and most of the regulations are harmful. They're not approaching it the right way, and I absolutely agree with you.
Speaking of more harmful, you should see Dimitri mix e-liquid when we're overseas when he starts to add his nicotine to it. I mean, there's harm, not only harm to Dimitri, but anybody standing around him, because there's just like liquid splashing all over. It's a horrible thing. Dimitri, if you can do me a favor and send me the link to the anti-bullying detector, I'd like to carry one of those with me when we travel overseas.
It would go off all the time. We would be
constantly
beep,
going off.
It's be sending out alarms. I just find it hilarious. I just one little last subject to talk, and then I want to go back to the book for a little bit. But the other day I talked to Dr. F, and he was at some conference in Asia, and he said that a lot of the anti-vaping crowd, including a lot of medical professionals now, have, you've thrown all the science to them and they can't dispute it. And at the end of the day, now what they're doing is they're just basically character assassination against a lot of these people that have taken I just want you to touch on that briefly if you can, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, that's certainly happening in Australia. I don't think the evidence is not beyond that. It's beyond doubt. There's no question. They can't compete on the evidence. They can distort the evidence, and they can use bad science, and they can, confuse causation and association, and they can talk about cell studies. But if you're serious about analysing the evidence properly, there's no question about it. They can't win on that. So we can't get the anti-vaping advocates in Australia to debate us. They'd much rather go to the media and say, oh, we found in this cell study that this mouse got cancer, or kids are vaping and smoking, therefore vaping is causing smoking. And the media quite happily accept that. But they can't argue the evidence with somebody who knows what they're talking about. So yeah, character assassinations all the time. I was asked to speak at a teaching hospital clinical unit recently, and one of the doctors, and I was locked in to do that, one of the doctors wrote to the organizer and said, oh, but he's associated with tobacco companies and paid by big tobacco, and they cancelled the talk. Now I've written to the director of the unit and said, well, hang on, this is ridiculous. We've got to hear both sides of the story, and that's also defamatory. And I've been waiting a few weeks to hear back. But that's the sort of thing we get all the time.
Yeah.
That's what they resort to. because they don't want the facts to be debated.
Yeah. Yeah, and they would lose, and especially nobody. It's another thing that once you've taken a stance for so long, like being anti-vaping, is really hard for any medical professional or any politician or anybody that's in the public eye to come out and say, oh yeah, we made a mistake. Even the CDC here in America with the Evali fiasco, if you go to the website, there's just one little paragraph now in this entire website of the CDC that says, oh, you know, this was by illicit THC cartridges, instead of them, you know, because if they came out and publicly and made a huge announcement, which they should, that would prevent deaths, you know. But they're not doing it. Imagine what the public would say. It's like, well, we can't trust this. They already can't trust us with a COVID thing. Can you imagine if we said that as well too? So nobody wants to look like silly.
They've locked themselves in. I mean, they've locked themselves in. And there's the whole groupthink thing. I mean, if one person steps out of line, the other organisations and their colleagues are going to come down on them. And of course, that person then loses status and promotion opportunities and financial opportunities. And they're discredited within their organisation. It's very hard when there's a whole organisational groupthink thing going on that keeps this going.
Yeah, and it's profitable for a lot of them as well too. It goes back to the perception that Phil was talking about earlier. All this has obviously, you know, created this, which is the relative harm perception of e-cigarette versus cigarettes, with a brief conclusion of e-cigarettes as more harmful than cigarettes increased sharply between 2019 and 2020. Obviously, that was the years of the Evali, and it's just not an accurate messaging. It's something that's extremely hard to overcome.
And they still use Evali to undermine vaping. I mean, it's still, in spite of the evidence, it's still widely used. It's had a huge effect. It needs to be corrected, but no one's willing to do it.
Yeah.
They're always maintaining, there is some doubt. Just today, there was a paper published of a 15-year-old who had Evali in North America, and it presented with coughing up blood, and they thought that was an interesting case. But in the small print, it said, this patient initially denied taking THC, but later on, we found out she actually had. And there are so many cases like that. And we're sure that that's the majority of the people who have said they didn't use nicotine, that they in fact had Evali.
Yeah. I back to the book for just a little bit. I want to inform people on how they can be able to get it. Obviously, you can go to Dr. Colin Mendelson's blog. I have the link inside the chat, and of course, that Phil is going to have it on the replay notes as well too. But the easiest way to go is right here. Just go to Amazon and just type "Stop Smoking, Start Vaping," and then the book comes up in a Kindle format or in a paperback format as well too. And I highly suggest that you guys pick up a copy. Have you? Dr. Colin, obviously you've given this book to some of the medical professionals. Have you gotten any feedback from medical professionals on the book?
Look, it depends on their original view.
Any bad reviews, I should say? Maybe somebody can give you a 1-star review on Amazon.
No, all the Amazon reviews are 5-star.
Okay.
I'm quite proud to say. And I've had wonderful reviews from Peter Hayek and Neil Benowitz and John Britton, and they're all published at the front of the book. But yeah, doctors and others, I think it's very hard to break through unless, you know, but I think it is going to be a gradual process where we gradually wear them down. I must think one thing about the book is, yes, it's printed in the US as well, and in the UK and in Australia. So if you do order on Amazon, it does come fairly easily that way. And that page you mentioned it tells them where they can buy it.
Yes.
As well as other websites other than Amazon. So.
Yes, absolutely. And your blog is filled with a lot of information. It's definitely one of my bookmarks for tools to use. You know, over the years I've accumulated a lot of those. but I think that having these tools like your YouTube and having the book and having the blog and not Clive Bates, and I can go on and name a lot of people that are really dedicated to tobacco harm reduction, but having these tools again, in my opinion, unfortunately, through the industry, and when I talk about the industry, I'm talking about the people that are making money, okay? Not so much the vapors. It's just underutilized. You know, there's just absolutely no doubt in my mind that we could do so much more, and we need to step up.
That's right. There's a huge budget for the people who are opposed to vaping. There's very little money for the pro-vaping people. The industry, of course, could support a campaign, and it needs a public relations campaign and what we call government relations, where you have lobbyists going to government, because that's how they work. You need to change the hearts and minds of the people, as the PR is important, but you also need to work on the government. And it does take money. And these organisations are enormously funded through the master settlement partly.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much a David and Goliath.
We need a Bloomberg for vaping. That's what we need. We need. I tried to play the lottery a couple of weeks ago when it was almost $1 billion, but unfortunately I didn't win. So
it was actually $1.2 billion, and I was hoping that he would win because he promised if he did win that I would get $1 million, and we did the opposite, the same thing too.
Yes,
if I won. All of the links that you saw tonight, all of the websites, Dr. Colin's contact information, everything is going to be with a replay on tasteyourjuice.com. What about Audible? I think maybe Audible too. You could have Dimitri read it, but nobody would understand with his big, thick Greek accent.
Bad idea.
That'd be a bad idea. Yeah.
I've thought about that, but you know, it is a question of time. There's so much to do.
Yeah, we should hire a professional audiobook reader, and we should maybe start a GoFundMe to hire a professional book reader to read it with a nice, thick British accent, like a woman with a thick, like this one right here. Watch. All right, let me see if I have this. No, I don't have it here. Hold on, let me see if I have it here. We need somebody like, okay, come on. It's not there. It's here.
It's okay.
That's not it. It's in bank one.
Dimitri, just step away from the audio tonight. Just
you are listening to the DP Show with Dimmy and Phil.
That's what we need. We need somebody like that, with a good voice like that.
Okay. Oh, thanks for the tip. I'll consider it.
All right. Before we wrap it up, Dr. Colin, the message that we always try to get here when we bring on a medical professional, the last question that I have is, with all the data that's out there, everything that you have read in this past decade over vaping, is there any reason that you would suggest a smoker not transition to vaping?
Not transition. Oh, I can't. Look, I think if they can quit with conventional treatments and they're on nothing and able to switch to nothing, I think that's always our first choice. But vaping, I think, is a proven, much safer alternative, which works for a lot of people who have tried repeatedly conventional treatments. So, yeah, I can't think, if they've tried other treatments and they haven't been successful, I can't see any reason why they shouldn't. And ideally, we tell everyone to try and quit vaping ultimately if they can. But if they can't, I don't lose any sleep over it, because I think the benefits of having gone from smoking are so huge. This is only a minor issue, and I'd rather spend my energy on helping someone else to switch.
Fantastic. Phil?
I have nothing more to ask or to say. I sincerely appreciate your time. We talked about doing this at the Dubai show, and we got it done. And we apologize for the issues at the beginning of the show, but sincerely, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn, thank you so much for joining us. And if anybody has any last minute questions, or if you have any last ideas that you would like to say, now's the time.
Yeah, look, I've got nothing to say. I think we've covered it all, and I just would thank you guys also for your advocacy. I mean, this is what we need, and we need more political advocacy as well. And people do need money to get effective advocacy, and I think the industry and the vapers really do need to step up and fight this. And I'm sure we'll win, but the sooner the better. And it's not just the vapers, it's the smokers I'm worried about. It's getting harder and harder for smokers to switch to vaping. And with all the negative publicity and all the difficulties that they're facing, many of them unfortunately are going to suffer as a result and miss out on this opportunity. So I think we need to we need to, and I think one benefit of the book is if you have a friend who smokes, the book could be the best birthday present they'll ever have.
Fantastic.
And I really want people to quit. That's why I've written the book. And if you can pass the book on, if you have a copy, to a smoker, to your doctor, to anyone for whom it may be useful, the wider it's spread, the better.
I have a question before you go. Have you sold 1 million copies yet? Because let me tell you something. After this show, you still won't have sold 1 million copies. Just point that out.
I don't think I've paid off I'm still losing money. I haven't paid off the costs.
Oh boy.
We had to have huge legal advice for this book. My lawyer was $850 an hour. Because the laws in Australia, the regulations are so tight, there's such anti-vaping opposition. If I stepped out of line, someone would have jumped in and taken us to court. And then there was marketing and all of that. So it'd be nice not to lose too much money. So yeah, that's a factor I must have to keep in mind.
Well, it's a great tool and it's a great read, and I strongly recommend it.
Yes, my daughter wrote a book. My 15-year-old daughter wrote a book, and I will tell you, it's not cheap. It's not cheap to get it published, but we certainly appreciate it. Another way that the vapors can help, and the people that are watching this show, will be to go and subscribe to Dr. Colin's YouTube. He needs to get more subscriptions. Also, the YouTube algorithm it's the worst. So what really helps videos is when you like them, when you share them, and when you also comment. One of the things that really upset me is that I haven't seen a lot of comments, even if it's just a nice comment underneath, especially the short videos, something that says, "Hey, good job, Dr. Colin. I appreciate it. Thank you. I feel the same way." Comments really drive the algorithm up, and they can actually suggest that video in somebody else's feed that might not know that video is there. So subscribe, like, share, and obviously leave a little comment under the videos. That really drives the YouTube algorithm up.
Another suggestion would be for Colin to go get Carl's shirt and go on TikTok.
Yeah,
go on TikTok.
That would work.
That'd be a good idea too. Yeah,
that would work well. All right. Well, we appreciate you, Dr. Colin, for coming on.
Thank you very much for your
again.
time.
We apologize for the audio. Phil will edit it and clean it up for us on the replay. So I gave him some extra work to do tomorrow, like he didn't have anything else to do. But we definitely going to share the replay on Twitter. If you guys like this video, give it a little thumbs up. Share it with somebody. Share it with somebody that smokes. You know, maybe they'll pick up the book as well too, and maybe we're able to save another life. That's what's really, really important. Traveling note: Sunday, I'm leaving to go to Greece, so hopefully I'll be settled in. So next Tuesday we'll do the show. I will be from Greece. However, we are working with Phil a little bit on the time schedule. We might have to change the time of the show on Tuesday. So maybe go a little bit earlier, maybe earlier than ST's show. Come on, like 6 o'clock in the evening. So it'll be an evening DP for you guys. But we'll figure it out, and we'll definitely let you know on our social media.
We can send
Phil.
people to Scott's show for a change.
Yes, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Phil, any last thoughts from you?
No. Are we going to let the good doctor go and carry on for a few more minutes?
No, I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to wrap it up because I just got to figure out what's going on with my board over here. So.
Okay. Because I had a couple fun things to do, but if you want to,
let's do the fun things next Tuesday. Is that cool?
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Colin, and everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, great.
Did you drop?